Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pioneer webinar. I'm Sudeshna Sen. I'm the host and founder of Pioneer, your go-to network designed for women founders and entrepreneurs building game-changing companies. This is meant to be an interactive session, so feel free to drop your questions as we go. We'll keep an eye out on it and try to cover as many as possible. But first, we'd love to hear from you and get to know you better. So drop in the chat who you are, what you're building, where you're from, and of course, your LinkedIn profile so that others can connect with you. With that, I'm excited for today's conversation because I believe it tackles something that I hear often from founders all the time, which is the pressure to scale fast or get left behind. But chasing growth at all costs often, what I see, leads to shallow engagement, to fragile foundations. So today, in today's talk, we are flipping that script. We'll explore why perhaps your real moat is not speed or hype or funnels, but really the depth of the connection that you are building with your users, your customers, your community. And today, hopefully, what you'll walk away with is more practical strategies and how to sort of integrate this strategy as you're building your startups. With that, I'm thrilled to be joined by Stephanie Kaiser. She is the founder of saymore, which is an incredible platform for mental wellness. I believe all of you should check it out. And the best part about this platform is that it is built on trust, on resonance, on real human connection. So, Stephanie, welcome to Pioneer webinar. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sudeshna. As Sudeshna said, I'm Stephanie Kaiser. I'm the founder of saymore, an online mental wellness community where others can find their own communities that mean more to them than maybe what's out there right now from like a social media network. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about my experience with it. It's been fun so far.
Thanks, Stephanie. It's great to have you here. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's unpack the word community. So, what does community really mean when, especially, it's not just a tactic, but the heart of a startup strategy?
Yeah, I feel like we talk about this a lot, Sudeshna, that community is a very popular word right now, which I love, don't get me wrong, but like shoe companies have communities now. It's like any brand is building out this deeper network to try and relate to their consumers, users, what have you. And so community for me has always meant really meaningful connection with one another, especially at times like now where everything feels super intense and uncertain. And instead of going maybe online into social media, you can like go into actual communities and feel connected in a way that's powerful. So community has been changing that we've seen, and we're, instead of just following an influencer or seeing stuff online, we want people to interact with each other like on an equal basis. That's what say more is about. So it's a weird time. I think a lot of people can relate to like, how do I have my own personal community, like whether that be in my neighborhood or at schools where my kids are at or whatever, but also how do I foster that in a broader way, especially from a networking standpoint for entrepreneurs, which I know you're very familiar with. So again, for me personally, community is people I can actually reach and touch and reach out to and know I'll get a response, and a personal one at that, when I'm struggling or having questions or doubts. So that's what it means to me today. I'm sure it'll change down the line too. So
Well, that's an incredible answer, Stephanie. I mean, we all look for communities, but while we are building our own startups, we often, community is often an afterthought. So, my question to you is why do you think so many founders who are building these startups default to community as an afterthought and are always chasing growth? Like, what do you think is driving this based on your experience?
well, I saw this funny tweet the other day that was like, it's crazy how, maximizing shareholder value hasn't made the world a better place. And I think that was really funny, of this idea that we forget about the people again within our own line of business, whether that be the users or the people we network with. So I found that when I first was building Say More, of course it was about community, but we get wrapped up when you first enter this world. It's so confusing, especially as a woman. And this proof of concept is so heavy and so much pressure that it's like if you're not hitting numbers, whether that be on your brand awareness or social media, then it feels like you're not making an impact. And what we've tried to do at Say More is always keep the people at the forefront that we're trying to serve. I mean, our service is connecting people together, but also connecting people with therapists because we believe in mental health and like actual mental health professionals being involved in these types of conversations to really guide them instead of just being a free for all platform. So it's been a challenge. Of course, I get caught in the like, oh, we had this great moment and, now we're like hitting some better numbers and we can show that to people. But really, our cheerleaders from the beginning, that's our community. And the word of mouth that we've gotten, and then the events that we've found and like created and the partnerships has really made the communities so much deeper. It forces people in a world where you don't have to do much on the internet to connect with people. You can comment, like, and then leave forever. It forces people to have a little bit more accountability of like, hey, I really like what you're doing and I want to be a part of it in some way. And like, here's my face. So that's kind of what we've always said. Like, we're constantly getting feedback. And I've always said from a saymore perspective is I'm super flexible with what this is. I'm creating a service and a product for people, but also like, what do they actually need? What are they actually using? For example, with saymore, I know we're like an online platform, but there's an anonymous feature. And at first I was told, oh, like, that's dangerous. Like, anonymous people can just go on and say whatever they want, even though they have a username, but like you can comment and engage anonymously on saymore. And I've always said the right people on our platform will use that the right way. The depth that you want to have of the communities that you've built, I think is super powerful and sticky if you want to get into the business side of things. But I also just think that what you said with this shallow like world we live in and the connections that we've built, there people aren't going to come back. Again, it's really easy to just like put your name out there and then have people get excited, but then people leave. It's like we're playing the long game here. And I think every business, especially if you're women owned and you're really passionate, I think that goes a lot further that we see all the time in other businesses as well. So
No, that's a great point, Stephanie. I want to take a step back on that because, what founders typically hear from VCs, from everyone else is like, we need more users, more customers, right? It's always growth, always these numbers. But you prioritized depth over scale.
mhm.
And you sort of broke away from this typical, grow fast or die mindset. And I'm sure the shift that saw by sort of moving along this path has had a huge impact, as you mentioned, on your product, on the way you run the company. So my first question is, what made you break away? And really, how can other founders who are caught up in this hype cycle, constantly chasing the next customer, the next user, can break away?
Yeah, I come from a finance background. I worked in financial sales at a big firm, and I worked a lot with investment bankers and investment, Fortune 500 companies. And I was so disillusioned really quickly with their motives and how that business actually worked. So I feel really fortunate enough to be able to have that experience. So then when I decided to go off on my own, I said, I want no part of that. I want no part of this like endless growth strategy. I just don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's possible, honestly, in the long term. So what I found was, again, because we're like mental health and we're really focused on people, I think that just completely flips that mindset on its head, which has been a relief, to be honest, because I try not to subscribe to that pressure still of, okay, we have to hit all these marks. But I do find that that mindset is just limiting, and like you don't get a lot of room to breathe or try other things and like allowing yourself to fail. We've tried a bunch of different projects that have tried to get new users and engagement, and they haven't worked, and it's been really fine. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, we'll try the next thing. And especially when you're building something that is either brand new or hasn't been done the way that you're doing it, I always remind myself that there's a reason for that. And a lot of businesses fail all the time, but a lot of people just give up. And I think that's also very real in this day and age. And some people can afford to give up and some people can't. And so it's a matter of like, pick what your tolerance threshold is for. But I do find that I never, if you can, and if you can afford to do it your way, I think people really admire that and are attracted to that in the long term too. I look at founders that I've really admired and connected with, and we have such a shared vision for how we run our businesses. And it's been so rewarding. And it also takes, again, away the pressure of working with people you just don't want to work with, or dealing with, demands that you don't need. Like, the whole reason people are building their own businesses is because they want to try something different and live a different way. So why would you create something to then go back right into those boxes that society has created for ourselves? So I know it's way easier said than done, but that's what I found with knowing like my background in finance and then going into business by myself. It's been a relief and its own challenges. So
100%. Feel free to ask any questions you have. It's an interactive session. So feel free to unmute yourself if you know if something you want to ask Stephanie. So I want to build on what you said, Stephanie. So as you said that, you know what, this has been sort of, very intentionally as you're building Seymour, you decided to focus more on people first, your users first, rather than chase these vanity metrics. So there are a lot of founders in this call, and I'm sure a lot of founders, especially early stage, who are sort of, realizing how hard this is and perhaps are shying away from pursuing a community first approach versus product first. So what are the three things you would say a founder can do right now to build that kind of intentional connection while they're launching or after they're launching? Like, what would you say?
yeah, I've been doing this for 2 years now, so still very early on this whole process. And initially, I cast a really wide net networking, which I think was great. But now that I'm 2 years in, I know who I trust and I know who I trust to refer me to other people. So I do think like use your time wisely is my first check because you are the business. So if you're not feeling good or you're being connected to people that are just criticizing what you're trying to accomplish, that's not going to keep you on the right track or excited about your work. Someone once told me, like, as the CEO, you are the number one salesperson for the business. So if you're not excited about it, then people feel that and they're not going to be excited about it. So I do think once you can no longer, like, once you've figured out who your people are and you don't have to cast a wide net, stay with those people and just really stick with the cheerleaders. And then in that same vein, the second thing I'd say is like constantly take feedback. I know feedback is kind of a scary word. And initially I was like, oh, I hate feedback. I don't want to send out the surveys or I don't want to ask people directly how they're feeling about the platform or my product or service. But once you start talking to people that you trust, people who are actually using your product or service, it doesn't feel like a criticism. It feels almost like exciting. Like, hey, I like this, but I kind of think that you should go try this or whatever. If it's more fun and playful instead of this like this is terrible and so ugly and you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. So that's another thing is like ask the people who are your super users or your cheerleaders, what do you think? And the people who are using it. Like I know there's a lot of people who will look at what you're doing and just like give you a bunch of feedback. Those aren't the people you need. You need the people who are actually like excited and in it with you. Whether that be professionally or just personally. And then the third thing again is just like being flexible with that feedback is saying, okay, that makes sense, or like that's kind of a down the line project. Like I don't have the funds for that right now, or what have you. Just make sure that you let people know that like you're open to the feedback, but also like stay with your own vision and trust it. And if you try a few times and it's not working out, then okay, let's try a different direction. But I don't think that's a failure by any means. I think that's again the fun part and the playful part once we start reframing it as like, okay, now I know what not to do, or now I know what people really hate about this, then that's fine. I think that's okay. And so I just want people to, again, what I've learned in the last 2 years is I want to do my business my way. And that should be energizing. And if it's not energizing, then we need to figure out something else because you, again, are the biggest salesperson for your business. So do it your way.
I think you mentioned a very important point, Stephanie, that we when we start build these companies, we are so energized, but then we find ourselves in a rat race and all the energy drains. But what really keeps the energy pumping is having that deep connection, that resonance with our users who are getting value out of the product or being, who are actively sort of being a part of our sort of founder journey.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious from the audience, as all of you are like building your products, your startups, what role has community building played, or is that something that you have tabled for later?
I'll go. It's central. I haven't launched my product yet. It's a virtual reality movement-based basketball game for the Meta Quest headset.
Oh, cool.
So we're trying to do like Nintendo Wii Sports again, but in VR, starting in basketball. But so it's really critical, especially in the gaming space. Like before, they'd get huge budgets and then work years on a game. And I get the AAA studios are still doing that. But for ones that are more innovative, like you really have to build a user base first and get feedback and just get something out there in the marketplace. It doesn't have to be pretty or perfect. And I think a lot of founders want to focus on like making it sure it's just right. So yeah, and we built our MVP, we raised from friends and family, and then but I wanted to test it with live in person, not based on blind surveys, because I really want to know like should we invest more in this? So we just called NBA teams and we have relationships with like 10 of them now and we got to demo our little MVP for the Cleveland Cavaliers at their playoff games and then also their G League um, team for the whole season. And they let us do surveys. They gave us tickets to their hockey game to award the top player the high score of the night. So it was really great. And then got all this survey data on like 111. But we had, and now I'm trying to get more. So I'm just going to reach out like on subreddits and things like that in the different basketball communities to try to get more users to play test and provide feedback and then direct those into Discord so we can engage more and like have them provide feedback on what they'd like to see launched.
That's awesome. Christine, did you cold call these like NBA teams or how did you
We
really?
sure did.
Good for you. That's amazing. I love
So
that.
some of the old school stuff still
Yeah.
works, but like I have a background in different like working for different entrepreneurial companies and startups. And so it's like you just have to be scrappy and like, okay, go for it, and it's like figure out a
Totally.
different way.
Totally.
So yeah, like I have relationships with the Pacers, the Sun, the Fever, the Kings. We went out there and a lot
Mm,
of them, but we have to pay a huge sponsorship fee. So
okay.
after we launch, I'm also going to look for like a brand, a corporate brand to sponsor us at these games so we can
Yeah.
continue to do that for the fans.
That's awesome. I've cold reach out all the time and it has been some of the most cool random relationships. So I love that you still do that too because I think people underestimate it. Like you don't expect anything and so any response is a win. So I'm
Yeah,
glad.
yeah. You just never know. You just have to
Yeah.
try different things. And then also just building in the XR community, like I also recommend like finding your people, like a community of other founders, like because it's lonely and it gets
Yeah.
depressing. And you can always like doubt yourself. I think especially as women, it's like, oh my God, are we doing the right thing at the right time and
Yeah.
all of that. But like I found like in the XR space, this community is like it's not competitive at all, which surprised me because we all want this industry to take off and believe so passionately in it that I've had like founders from like huge gaming studios come up to me and they're like, we want to help you. We love what you're building. And so they'll connect with me and like make introductions. So like networking is huge,
Yeah.
you know.
I also love that you found that it's not competitive. I've also found that
Mhm.
this like there's room for everyone mindset.
Mhm.
I mean, hopefully that continues, but it's interesting too that everyone I've worked with or partnered with or bigger people that I've talked to as well, they are just yeah, whatever you want to do, like let's talk. I'm also so surprised by that. So again, like I think it's intimidating at first, but I echo everything you said. Like
Yeah.
go
And
for
I
it.
also connected with a Hollywood actress who's also a VC. And she's super connected with a bunch of pro female players and she's talked to them and she's like, yeah, they love what you're trying to build. So fingers crossed that I'm gonna
Yeah,
get that group to fund me. But again, I need to prove traction. So it's really building up this community of users that really want to buy the product.
yeah,
What an amazing story, Christine. It all started with cold calling. And
Yes.
look where you are. From cold calling to partnerships to getting connected to the right people. I'd love to
Hmm.
hear from anyone else. Like what are the other tactics that you are trying? But Stephanie said she's cold calling, it's working for her. What else are is anyone else from the audience? What are you guys trying out in terms of building your user bases?
don't know, on the topic of community, this might take us in a little bit of a different direction, but I've been in business for almost 2 years, Stephanie, so similar timeline to you, running a business called On Leave Experiences. And kind of like you, I've been flexible to, okay, if my goal is to help burned out, stressed out women, I'm going to come out here with a product, but then I'm going to be flexible as to what is actually helping them. And so started with weekend experiences that were mostly solo trips. But now I'm finding myself as I'm looking at year two, almost backing into a community piece because I'm finding the weekly emails that I started writing just as marketing because someone told me, hey, you've got to show up in people's inboxes once a week, that the open rates are really high. They're 60 to 70% 2 years in. And so I'm looking at that data and saying, is there a community piece that I'm missing? Is there a revenue stream that, is a subscription? It scares me, especially because I think there's sometimes this mindset. I've been offering these emails for free. So if people see them as something free, then will they start paying for them? Is this a community? Do I want to go down the community path or not? Those are just some of the thoughts going through my head as I joined this call and sort of looked briefly into what you're up to. So would be curious to hear, is there a subscription for people to be part of your community? Is it people are part of the message board and then there's a product for them? Is it because you're in the mental health space, someone else is sponsoring it? Would love to understand more of all of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now we're not charging. I mean, you can have a soup, you can be a super user, which we do charge $2 a month for, and that's basically like you can build out your own community that you lead, and like we have no hands in it at all, which is like you can moderate it and do whatever you what have you. I'm just like you, very much afraid of this like paid wall. I don't, especially from a mental health standpoint, I'm trying to be like access is for everyone, and then we're gonna charge you. So it feels really counterintuitive, I guess. But yeah, I think I don't know if you've done Substack, but I've seen a lot of success with people who do their newsletters on Substack and then have a paid wall, like if you want more, or like all of the newsletters. And even the chat feature in Substack has been super cool. I'm a paid subscriber in certain podcasts and like people I follow. And that's been really cool to see the community actually interact again, like on that baseline level where it's not just like one to many. It's like all of the people who follow you or are interested in your work can also chat amongst themselves. So I've seen friends and founders have success with that as well. We're building out our own Substack again. Like all these platforms exist for their own purpose, but it's been interesting. I'm at the same point as you. Is like, when do you start saying like, is this valuable enough for people to pay for it? And I think you just have to try it, whether set a dollar amount and see like what happens, how much, people fall off or what have you. But you're at an interesting crossroads. It's almost like baptism by fire. Like, is this going to turn everyone off, or are you going to see like people be like, no, I'll pay $5 a coffee a month, and you can start really going from there. But yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I think monetization, we can spend a whole hour or more on that. But that's a great topic, Liz, in the sense that it's worth, as Stephanie said, worth trying out and maybe doing even an A/B test to see what's working rather than, just sending it all to everyone in your community to see what sticks. So let's go back to what Stephanie you mentioned. Let's hit up on a couple of things. So start with, you mentioned this interesting sort of dilemma we as founders have. We of course want to build this user base, this engaged community, so that we get feedback, but then we also have our own vision that might, may or may not align with the feedback that we're hearing from the community. So the question for you is that, how have you balanced sort of listening to the feedback from your user base, your community about your product, and then leading with your vision, and how has sort of that shaped your product strategy?
Yeah, I have two great examples of this, one that I hate, one that I love. So, early on, people were really giving me a lot of feedback about white labeling saymore as like a HR, EBRG corporate way for people to like who are the women in corporate to like talk and like sell it to companies. And that's a great easy way for me to make revenue really quickly and et cetera. And I was like, absolutely not. Do I want to be in that space? Like that sounds, it felt so not with Say More. It felt not anywhere near the long-term goal of like actually bringing people together and hopefully getting people to like locally show up like physically. And I was just like, I know HR, like I know those companies, like absolutely not. So that was one example of a lot of feedback and quick like revenue grabs that I was offered that I really did not want any part of. And then in the other vein, what we found is like we've always worked with mental health professionals, and I'm not a mental health professional, so I was always like, okay, we'll have like the users, normal people like you and me, and then always have someone on the line too if we do an event to like also give their, real professional feedback as well. And what we found is that the therapists just like kept coming back and like loved to Say More. And they were like, this is a space that we trust. We trust you. Like, it's not just influencer therapy where it's just 1 minute. Like you're actually trying to like help people. And so they kept wanting to work with us in like more of a meaningful way. And I remember being like, oh, this is like, I don't know how to work with them. Like they're therapists, they're the ones who are really dealing with a lot right now, especially with their clients and in the world as well. And so that was something interesting where I said, how do we incorporate therapists more so that they feel like they're getting something out of Say More in a longevity way? And what we found too is that therapists need help. They need support groups. Like they need to be able to talk to people about what they're going through, whether that be with their clients or not. And we're still figuring that out. What we found, we called it like, research market testing, where I was interviewing all the therapists about what did Say More mean to them? Why was it so appealing to be a part of this and work with me directly? And what did they want down the line? And they were also like, I don't know. Like, I know why we like working with you, but I don't know what we want down the line. And at first it was, why don't we have the therapists get together? Like they need, again, they all get their own support group, but we also got a lot of feedback that therapists are like, we're burnt out. Like I can't add another calendar invite to my thing and I can't pay for that right now. I don't want that. So, and we were partnering with a therapist agency in New York that we have a really great relationship with. I know all the therapists there. And I remember being like, yes, okay, we're going to partner with them. And then like, this is just going to explode and we'll partner with other therapists. And it's like, this is so entrepreneur, right? Of like, you get these lifts where you're like, wow, okay, I'm on the cusp of something. And like, this is going to change the whole game. And like, probably Christine, you felt the same way with like, the NBA players. You're like, all right, Pacers, like, what are we doing? Let's go. And then you're kind of like, well, wait, like, what does this look like? And what next? And like, how do people actually show up to this? Like, are they coming back? Why not? And so we're right after that realization. So you're meeting me right where I'm like, dang, like now what are our next steps? Like, how do we all want to work together, but how do we do it in a way that makes the most sense? And so again, that's part of the like flexibility I'm talking about is like therapists are our biggest cheerleaders. They want to have less of a one-to-one relationship sometimes and more broad reach, but how do they do that without being online in a way that feels gross, So we're still working that through and everything, but I'm excited about that. That's like a pivot that we found, or like a group that loves Say More that we didn't necessarily expect right away. They were just kind of like, definitely an add-on of like, yeah, we love therapists. Like we definitely want them in the conversations, but it's changing how I want Say More to be. Like, should we have a whole therapist network of like a market where people can go and find therapists? Do the therapists want that? Like, should we have them be rated by the users on Say More? Are they Say More verified? It's like there's so many different directions we could go with it, and we're still hammering out the details. But those are two ways that I've found of like one that really didn't fit and one that's kind of changing how we feel and see Say More now. So it's been interesting. And again, like this is supposed to be like the fun part too of like, okay, how is this going to look down the line? At first I thought it was just for me. Say More was just for me of like, I want to find people like myself who struggle with their mental health and X, Y, and Z. And now I'm finding that therapists want to be more involved in these conversations. And there's like bigger parts of the mental health conversation that are missing still. So again, I don't have all the answers, but it's just, those are kind of fun things that have come up along the way that you can trust your own intuition of like, this feels right. This feels really not right, and sometimes it does feel right. And then you change your mind, so that's also a possibility. And I'm open to that as well, but it's a challenge for sure.
But what I find fascinating is that by having this engaged sort of user base you've built and nurtured, Stephanie, you're now tapping into segments like therapists that you never even thought about. So your product has sort of become a marketplace in
Mhm.
which you're connecting, folks who are dealing with these mental wellness challenges with the audiences that can support them. So it's very fascinating how these things evolve. On that, a different lens I want to ask from what founders are dealing with. So they, of course, product is top of mind for every founder, but there's a lot of pressure from investors. And I believe a lot of investors question, like, why are you spending so much time, building your community? Just, give me more growth and all of that. So in your experience, Stephanie, and in your sort of lived or otherwise like broad experience, how would you say a community led or community first approach can influence some of these conversations, be it on fundraising, be it investor conversations, and so on?
Yeah, I've been bootstrapping to be completely honest. And again, I come from a finance background, so I feel fortunate enough to not have to answer to investors at this time. So if you are answering to investors, I feel for you. I have a lot of friends and entrepreneurs who are dealing with that right now, and it's such a terrible time. Let's just be honest about it. Having to basically prove your business to these people, these strangers, it's awful, right? It's like it's the nightmare, honestly, especially in a room full of mostly men, which is like predominantly the investor space. Like I think of Liz, like you're building out, like let's help burnt out women, and people are like, especially like working investor men are like, what do you mean? Like, oh, they're fine. Like COVID, people could relax and work from home. And it's like, these are really big, serious issues that people don't like necessarily value all the time. So I do think that from the investor conversation, this idea of like proof of concept to them and saying like, I'm going deep, like I'm looking for like the users that are going to like tell their friends. And then we have this like broad network across the country, right? Like that's the goal. And we can have people spearhead, like again, with Liz's example, like retreats in like California or New York and like be their own like super users for Liz's example. And I just think it's really, people aren't always going to understand that and they don't have to. But from my experience with friends and again, like colleagues who have had this is that you have to just keep going the course because that is what's going to like really drive through the conversation, whether it looks different now than what it's going to look like in the future. That's again, like you have that depth. And like, I know for me, like when I have an event for saymore or we partner with someone, you get that initial boost, right? Of like, okay, like look at these new people that came through and are excited, but then it dies down, and you're kind of back to feeling this like depressed, like, what am I doing? Like, how do I keep these people? And I think we're all struggling right now of how do you, like someone who offers help, but you don't necessarily know how they can help right now, like with the therapist or Christine's example with the NBA players, like, okay, they're excited, but like, how do we actually utilize them? I think that's where it's a joint conversation. And that's also what like stays with you for maybe the investor conversation down the line of I have all these connections. I have all these people who are in my court. I know I have a board of directors, like my lawyer really early on recommended that as like proof of people backing you. And I think that's very powerful from like an investor standpoint. I've seen it, but also again, like stay the course with what is like the vision and who your cheerleaders are. But it's such a highs and lows, right? Like I know we have all experienced it. So again, it's just such a challenge. I've struggled with it as well. So
And this is such a great insight, Stephanie. I think let's just put it out there. It is a struggle, but it's just doing it in a way that it's continues to be meaningful to you
yeah.
while you build the depth of the connection while you are sort of going after scale. I love any thoughts from the audience on what you guys are currently seeing where based on where you are. Are there any struggles that you're facing, and is community building playing a role in helping you overcome some of the scale challenges? Okay. Okay, so all of you are thinking, that's good. At least I'm glad you are here in this conversation. And this is something hopefully you're thinking about. Let's go a little bit deeper there here, Stephanie, in the sense that, as you said, this is like building an engaged user base while you are, as a founder, working on product, growing the company and doing whatnot. It's a challenging undertaking in itself. And as community is like a very dynamic. It's like your user base is very dynamic, you're constantly growing and their priorities are constantly shifting. So from a say more standpoint and broadly, how do you plan to, evolve your community as a core strategy while maintaining the depth of connection? Because as you said, it's hard. So what do you have in the works, and what can founders learn from your experience?
Yeah, I've always said say more is not for everyone. We don't want to be the Reddit. We don't like it's for very passionate about women and women entrepreneurs and women's issues, especially in the mental health space. I think we have very unique challenges. So that's honestly my broad long-term goal is really connecting women and like getting them the help that they need from like a professional and personal way. But yeah, I think the long-term vision for us, especially again things I want to stay excited about with Say More is like again such a priority. We have these side projects with Say More, like partnerships we're working on and like media that we want to really produce and like get out there as well for people to share their stories and then get connected to each other, just normal people talking and being in these rooms. And I think I mean, a small story. There's this podcast I really like, and it's very, powerful, like empowering to like women, all this stuff. And then I found out that there's local chapters, and we're meeting today for like a happy hour for the first time. And I was thinking from my own professional standpoint, like I've listened to this podcast for a year. What is making me show up physically to a happy hour and meet these other people? Like that's kind of scary, and I don't know them and I don't know what to expect, but there's something in there where I'm just so passionate about the people who are running the podcast that I know I'm definitely going to connect with some of these people who show up today. And that's something interesting for everyone to think of, like what makes you actually show up as a user, like and I think it's like stuff that makes you feel, that really like hits to your core, that you're like, wow, like I want to be a part of that, or that's so cool, like I want to get more people involved in this way. And I just find that that's kind of what we're all coming back to. I feel like as society, I think especially with COVID, we retreated inward so hard and it was like disconnect and you're only online. And I think now I'm feeling like people really do want to get back outside and like see people and meet other people, especially given like new perspectives. So that's like the long-term goal of Say More is like we're an online platform, so I can't say I don't want people to be online, but I also want people to take that out into their real lives, whatever that is for your business. And for us, it's like having those tough conversations. We had an event around women in miscarriage, which I've never personally experienced that, but I didn't realize how much women don't get to talk about that and have not been able to share their stories in a safe way, and how the healthcare system really doesn't, not necessarily care, but they don't value it like they should, and how dramatic that can be. And that was a year ago in New York, we hosted an in-person event, and I still get messages of people being like, that event really stayed with me. And I was like, oh, well, let's get you to another event, or like, let's get you connected to the people in New York so you can like continue those conversations. Life keeps happening. So I just think that, my end goal is to always get people together in real life and again bring people back to that playground mentality instead of just staying perpetually online. And I'm from the generation that is perpetually online, and I do see that shift happening in real time of people wanting real people in their life. So yeah, it's fun though. Again, I want to always stay close to things that I'm excited about so that I don't get burnt out and feel like what's the point, because I know we all feel that way all the time. But I think if you're a part of like I think of Liz's newsletter, like she's getting such great open rates. Like what does that mean? Like do these women want to talk to Liz more? Do they want to hear from Liz more? Do they want to hear from the other people who are also excited about Liz? Like that's an opportunity. What does that mean? Like what would that look like? Like Liz can try that out. And so I think if she's excited about that, then like you should run with that, Liz. Like that's a great stat. I don't have that open rate at all, and like it's nice too because people hate email. So if they're opening your email, that's another win. So I just think there's a lot more opportunity, and to like have that energy around it, that it is an opportunity. It's exciting, and you don't have to have the answer, and let that go where it goes, whether she goes on Substack or she just creates, these local chapters that hopefully can get together if that's what she wants to do too. So yeah, I think it is a weird time, but I also think for people like us, like Christine and Liz sharing their stories, I think anyone can identify with that and want to celebrate that and be a part of something else. And I'm excited about the future because of that. I think there's promise ahead, even though it feels really bleak right now sometimes.
It's such I mean, you hit upon such an important thing, Stephanie, is that I think what we don't realize as founders is that we are sitting on a gold mine. Our current, or I see at least, is that all of us have a lot of users, customers, but we are always running after the next customer, the next customer. But think about what you have. Like Liz and Christine, you have incredible number of users, partners who are vested in you. If you double down there, growth will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Did somebody speak up? But I just want to kind of double down on that, and I just want to kind of open up to the audience. As you are thinking about, say, scaling and growing, what are some of the pain points you are seeing, and are you focused on retention, or is it always on acquisition, always on the next customer, and sort of how where are the challenges that you are facing?
Yeah, and I'm curious about people with like marketing because I know that's a huge question mark for a lot of people. Like, what are you finding with your marketing plans, like social media? How are you guys currently navigating that? Because that's a whole nother
Mm-hmm.
hurdle for brand awareness or engagement.
And I'd love to understand too, our partnerships. I feel like everywhere I go, people are like, you got to do more partnerships, partnerships here, partnerships there. Have people been successful with those? Or is it, I think, Stephanie, you made one mention to like, oh, you got all these new people coming to your site, but, do they stay? Do they become part of something? Partnerships just seem to be tossed out there as like the marketing thing right
Yeah.
now. Would love to understand it, folks who've doubled down on that.
Yeah, I can say from my experience, like Liz, I've had quick bumps, but then it's really drops off afterwards. So I do think there's nothing, I don't think it's hurtful, obviously partnerships, but I do think it's overhyped in a way that's not as, again, meaningful of building that depth of community and depth of the user base. So I mean, obviously don't say no, but what I've found is it feels more surface level than anything, unfortunately. But if anyone else has a better experience, please share because I would love to hear as well.
I agree. I think for some of the partnerships, like even the Cavs are an awesome partner. They're like, who do you want intros to? They introduced us to like all the top agencies to get connected to NBA players. And then also to other teams. But at the end of the day, we need to find a brand sponsor. And they even slashed their sponsorship fee in half for us to get us into the next season and then approach all their sponsors. But those are year-long contracts. And so I feel like we're really too early for a huge, partnership like that.
Yeah.
And so I think we really have to prove ourselves in the marketplace first. And so that's why I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on our users and really who our ICP is. Because just from doing different activations, we've also, which I didn't realize going into this, like we really resonated with men and women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who used to play and just don't have the time for league play and they're bored with the gym. And so, which, was surprising to hear. So I'm just going to look at both like, and regarding social media, I've tried like organic and a lot of the like game devs that have large studios are like, nobody wants paid ads. You will not get people
Mhm.
in paid ads. So you've really got to do organic marketing. And so I think once we launch, or even from our testers, to get them to post from their own experiences will help because that's word of mouth. But also looking for, because I also don't want to like focus on one channel for that and not be because just in like the with Meta, it's like they can change their mind at any time, or even like with TikTok. So you don't want to be beholden to one platform. So I'm also looking at some in person, like real things and signing up college students at D1 schools to do activations at their own universities that can get the student body like hyped up about basketball, around basketball, and offer them prizes or things like that.
I think your point, Christine, is salient around the just or nobody wanting ads. I think these days it's people have relied so much. I mean, just speaking as a marketer, people relied so much on paid digital for so long, thinking that it was just like turning on a faucet of new customers, which in a certain, like for certain sectors of business, it's useful in at least figuring out who comes through the pipeline. But my instinct, especially when it comes to community building, is that companies are really obliged to make it as easy as absolutely possible. Again, to your point, Christine, for existing customers to refer to other people and to put their happy, positive experiences out there. Like Liz, for what you do, like making ways for people to really easily share like the beautiful pictures of their beautiful escapes and retreats, and those types of ways to like get people to the social proof. And I think we all want the social proof, as whether as marketers or business owners, but I think it's kind of on the businesses to make it easy to do that, to make referral gamified, to make, sharing content really easy and fun and reward them for it in different ways. That's kind of like the community manifesto.
Definitely. Samantha, to your point, I think one of our metrics that we value above anything is like the share button.
Yeah.
That's where it's like someone is connecting to someone else directly.
Totally.
It's so much more meaningful, like instead of the likes to comment ratio, you know what I mean? So I love
it's so easy to just like something, but sharing actually shows a meaningful intent.
Absolutely. That's a great point.
That's an excellent point, Samantha. Any questions from the audience? I'm opening it up to any and all questions for Stephanie.
I would love to know, Stephanie, how you have gotten your early users, where you saw them coming from, how, is there a flywheel somewhere that's kind of bringing in, a ripple effect of new users?
Yeah, so what we found early on was these events. So ultimately, we wanted people to come to the events, but also I tapped people to say like, hey, would you want to speak about this? Like you're really passionate about women and ADHD or whatever it is. And it gives them this like ego boost, obviously, of like, yeah, like I'm a pro at that, or I have a lot of experience. And it kind of again has created this more sticky like ambassador, I don't even like to use that word, as of saymore, of like, hey, I'm having this experience, I want to share this. And it's that like one to many relationship again of people being like, I want to share my story and I hope you can come and listen and watch. And so we've had events around very specific topics, whether that be like women in ADHD or the women in miscarriage one we've had, and some of them have been in person and some of them have been just online, and we've seen a lot more traction. And what my team and I talk about a lot is like the 3 stages of a user, where it's like the lurker, like they're not going to join, they're just kind of watching, showing, and then they graduate to maybe like liking and joining and commenting, and then we want them to graduate again to like kind of leading their own charge of like whatever they want to share personally. And so it's like, how do you give people that energy and like that kind of push to be like, hey, like you can do it. Like, do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about this? Like, how can we like give people that power back, and get them excited? Like they're invested in saymore, and whatever that means to them. So we talk about that a lot, especially from the event standpoint of like, the end goal is that I'm not involved at all, right? People are just taking this out of being like, hey, I want to like via saymore, we're going to have this thing around like the group that has ADHD and women. Like I want us to get together this month. I had an issue or a doctor's appointment, whatever. That's the end goal of like, they're so empowered and excited, and they already feel like they have relationships with some of these people that they've talked to, that they can like put that out there again. So again, we talk about that like stage a lot, and kind of working through that. And what we found so far is the events. Again, it's a lot of lift from my end. So managing that is
hard to scale.
Yeah. And scale. Exactly. It's like, how do we, and I also don't want it to get unwieldy where you get some, it's the internet, you get some weirdos, so I'm like, I don't want them to be the face of it either.
They're lurking out there too.
Oh, and they're there. So yeah, it's that balance. We're still trying to perfect as well. So I'm sure everyone can relate.
Do you solicit from your group, your community now for those things? Okay.
Yeah. And we're kind of, especially with the therapists, we've gotten so much excitement around therapists just connecting around various topics. I ask them what topics they want to talk about and they're most passionate about, and we'll go out and I'll send out, I want to keep it small so that people feel like they can actually engage and like speak up. So it's only between like, we found the sweet spot is like 6 to 8 people total. And then we let people kind of like show up and do what they do and kind of be like, hey, this is a really small group. So like please show up. Like you can't, like your absence will be noticed. So we kind of like, again, put a little pressure on them to make sure they show up. But we go online and like see people who have bigger presences, like on TikTok or something, who are therapists, and we just invite them, and some of them come, and it's like, okay, they're like, wait, this is cool. So it's, again, it's the cold calling, it's the, personal reach out. It's just, we're throwing everything at the wall. Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I guess this is so much more so much more sort of relationship oriented than typical go-to market that we do. And
Mhm.
no wonder those customers we get through sort of, these blasts, go-to market blasts, they don't stick around. So the question becomes, how do you get a captive audience that is willing to be your ambassadors, your advocates, and pull in more, users to your platform?
Yeah. Well, Sudeshna, I'm curious to put the question back on you because you're building your own literal community-driven platform with like women and women entrepreneurs. So I feel like the first bout of your business, like it's really exciting and you get a lot of people interested, but I'm sure people have fallen off. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you navigate? What have you found success and failures in?
Yeah, for me, I think what I have learned building the community is the most important factor is trust. I mean,
Mm.
nothing can beat trust, and the trust comes through, truly driving value and being genuinely relationship oriented. There are people that fall off, but then I've seen they're mostly women who are planning to go back to jobs. I mean, I would say 99% who have moved on are going back to corporate, and many of them have come back because they are like again back to entrepreneurship. And I felt that genuineness, if you really are genuine and you're looking to build something value based, where is this constant value exchange, which takes a lot of lift, of course, out of us. But I feel that's so rewarding, it's very energizing, and it's so worth it. Rather than, just growing for the heck of growing. I know that in many companies, like if you're building a SaaS company or some of these, big D2C companies, it's not possible to sort of personally know everyone. But it's like, how do you, to Stephanie's point, build some of these communities and empower them so they feel connected to you, to your cause and your mission, which I think is very critical with the new generation of users that we have.
Yeah, and even from my experience, I feel so loyal to you, Sudeshna, like just from meeting you and connecting with you and obviously having these types of conversations, our relationship, like beyond like scheduling and whatever, like that keeps me coming back. So I think that's just our own proof of concept within this group, right? Of like if you really like someone and you like what they're doing, you do feel this like parasocial relationship of like, oh, I want to keep in touch or I want to just keep looking at what she's doing, and stay in touch. So I think that's also just very like the universe, it's like kind of like keeps you chugging along, and is a good sign.
Thank you, Stephanie. That means a lot to me. We have time for one last question. Anyone? Okay. If not, I think this was a great conversation. Thank you, Stephanie, for your time. I think what I learned, today is that, growth is great, and of course we should pursue growth, but growth without building a depth of connection with our user base, our customers, is extremely fragile. So when we center our startups or what we are building around trust, around a deep connection, I think we build companies that last. So again, thank you all for joining us. If you're looking for more spaces like this, love for you to join Pioneer. It's for women, like all women, women like you. And as you can see, we go deep into these conversations, and our whole goal is to support each other. So until next time, keep building, and I'll see you at the next session. And of course, I'll share the recording in a day or two.
I really enjoyed this, you guys. Thanks for talking and everything. This was super fun. See you around.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Stephanie and
Bye.
Sudeshna.
Bye.